Let's begin. Mr. Smith, you have 3 minutes for opening remarks.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight and allowing us the opportunity to share our perspective, our vision, and what we would propose for Scott County. And for brevity, I'm going to go on and I'm going to detail your opportunity that you're going to have next May, this coming May, on the 22nd, to vote for the most qualified candidate ever to seek the office of Scott County Judge. My business career began in banking, then went into industry and then private business. Since coming to Scott County in 1982, we were in the development business, and I not only envisioned entire communities, was able to build them, construct them, to maintain them, and service them for over 3 decades. The ability and the experience that I gained in building roadways, building water lines, sewer lines, tens of miles, and the servicing of them uniquely qualifies me to ascend to that next step, to continue public service and ask for your vote and support as your next Scott County Judge. I'm the only candidate who has a lifetime of community service, beginning when I was a child in Boy Scouts, when I was awarded the rank of Eagle. And I was inspired and instilled in me at that time to know that community service not only benefited the community, but the individual that provided it. My 30 years of dedication and membership in the Scott County Chamber of Commerce, twice as vice president. This last time I was extended the honor, the highest honor in the business community, of being elected president of the chamber. I will always be so very proud and honored of that. I've been a member of Scott County United for nearly 30 years, a development group, a think tank that goes back that 30 years before Toyota, that goes back before the bypass, that was involved in all those decisions, discussions in Scott County, to become a member and a piece of the fiber of Scott County. I've been president of the Mallory Point Owners Association for 29 years. After I'd had enough fun, in 29 years, I stayed on the board and I continued to serve that community for 35 years. I was a chairman of the Main Street program. Twice I served as that. Twice that program was award-winning by the state. I'm the only candidate whose experience in development, whose oversight, the development and envisioning of communities, can take oversight of planning and zoning for our rapid growth in Scott County that we're going to anticipate. I know the rules of the road. I'm the only candidate who's gone through the planning and zoning process, let alone envisioning entire communities. This makes me, once again, uniquely qualified to be your next Scott County Judge. I'm the only candidate who has managed multi-million-dollar budgets in his own business in years. And I'm the only candidate, in my mind, who can do the job as your next Scott County Judge, day one, taking office. There's 2 words that would be intertwined in my lifetime, my experience, my occupations, my avocations, and that's success in business. I would ask you tonight, please allow me to continue the success that Scott County has had as your next Scott County Judge and put sound business practices in the county government.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Covington, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for coming. I'm Joe Pat Covington, and we might not all agree on everything, but I think we would agree on this, that we're here tonight because we care about Scott County. And we care about Scott County not only for us, but for our children and its future. And that's why we're here, and that's why I'm running for Scott County Judge Executive. I was born here, I've been raised here, and I deeply love this community, and I'm dedicated to this community. I'm a graduate of Georgetown College. I have a master's degree from Georgetown College and Eastern Kentucky University in leadership, educational leadership. And it's important to us. We are in a huge juncture in time and transition. We've been blessed to have a good leader as Judge Executive with George Lusby, but we need a proven leader to step in and bring in a new era. And that's what I'm going to do. And leadership boils down to 2 things. One is casting a vision and then influencing people to share that vision and move with you. And how do you do that? How do you influence people? Well, day in and day out, you are consistent how you treat people and how you react to people. And you bring people to the table and you listen to people and you get their information, you collaborate with them. And then you sit down and you make a decision that's best for everybody involved. Since 2007, I've been an administrator at Scott County High School. The last 3 years, I've been head principal. And I have worked with people from all over the county, and I know what our county's needs are. I've spent the last year talking with different people in different leadership roles through our county government. And I feel like I have a real feel about where we need to go. And I've listened to people. And as we move forward, it will be a challenge. And that's why we need someone with proven leadership. And the last 3 years, I have worked with, next year, our staff at Scott County High School, we'll have 150 staff members. Our payroll for benefits and salaries next year will be close to $10 million that I help manage. And I have that proven experience working with people day in and day out. And I think my record speaks for itself. And I believe that my skills would fit being judge executive, and it would make a difference going forward. And I'm excited about this opportunity to talk tonight, and look forward to hearing what you all have as questions.
Thank you, Mr. Covington. Mr. Hughes, you have 3 minutes.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out this evening. One of the first nice Saturdays we've had this spring, and you all chose to be here with us, and we appreciate that. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and my family. I grew up in Scott County and was fortunate to live my entire life here. I have 3 adult children, and they live in this community. I have 6 grandchildren. They're being raised in this community. So everything that's valuable to me is here. Our business is a farming operation that we have had for 45 years. And much like government or anything else we do in life, how that operation has changed over the years is mandated by the policies that come before us. We don't farm the same way today that we did 20 years ago. And we can't run government the same way today that we did 5 years ago. Things change, people change, and the opportunity to do more things come to us. The growth in this community has been phenomenal. Especially those of us who've lived here all our lives realize that. What I bring to this race is experience, having served on the fiscal court for 8 years. I won election in 2006 and 2005 to start my term in 2006 and served 2 terms. I was the first Republican on the fiscal court in over 40 years. And today, outside the judge executive, every member of the court is a Republican. And I'm proud to be at the forefront of getting that done. The experience I bring to this from those 8 years, we built and manned a fire station in Sadyville. We did a sewer line project to the landfill and to Sadyville. We also started the planning, the preliminary planning for the road department. So those are some of the things we got done. Also in that time, if you remember in 2008, things turned a bit bad in the economy. And I worked with Democrats to see that county government was able to stand off, not raise taxes, not lay anybody off, and still provide the services that this community needs. And service is what county government is all about. I don't care if it's the fire department, the EMS, the sheriff, animal control, or even the detention center. It's service to this community. And how we provide that service in a professional, timely manner that's cost effective to the people of this community. So what I bring to this race is the experience of having served on the fiscal court for 8 years, working as a minority on the court, and now hopefully working with a majority on the court to move this community forward and to provide the services that this county so richly deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Ms. Jones, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Kayla Jones. First of all, I do want to thank the organizers of this event, and I want to thank everyone that's here this evening. You could be doing something else tonight on this Saturday evening. We're taking your questions tonight, but I do want you to know that there's 3 things that I intend to start immediately come January 1st, 2019. That would be a full evaluation of pay and benefits of county employees. I think that's in order. I think it's time to do that. How do we compare to other counties? What ways are we doing better? And where can we improve? I think as far as turnover, we need to ask why we have county firefighters that are going to the city of Georgetown on a regular basis to become firefighters with the city. Secondly, I am very conservative, but I do think a countywide broadband it's time for that in Scott County. People need broadband, they need internet access to be able to work. Students need it. It's a no-brainer. We have to have it to succeed. And we need it to prosper in this time of our history. So that is a very high priority for me. And third, as a mom, I've witnessed a decline of two-parent families and decline of families in general, and overwhelming drug epidemic, and that's occurring in Scott County just like it is everywhere else. And things that I think about is I want to know that how I can change that. I would like for our county government to be able to work with any resource possible to be able to build stronger families, to work on some drug programs that might help our at-risk youth. And there's a lot more than these three things, but these are the things I want you to know about me that I would like to start progress on initially if I am elected as your county judge executive. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Feedback, sorry. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Now we're going to move on to our prepared questions. And Mr. Covington, you will receive the first of the prepared questions. You'll have 2 minutes to respond. Given that this is a Republican-sponsored event for a Republican primary for County Judge Executive, we know that each of you are, in fact, registered Republicans. Given that, I assume each of you is familiar with the party platform. Please share with us a couple of specific areas that we should expect to see supported in a county administration under your leadership. Mr. Covington.
I've been a Republican my whole life. Been a Republican before it was cool to be a Republican. And Ronald Reagan inspired me when I was in college. Physical responsibility is a priority. And we must be good stewards of our public funds. And from top to bottom. And that's my number one priority there, just as a Republican. And at the same time, I want to be forward-thinking and innovative and looking at ways that we can improve our county government and such. But it's important to me. I share beliefs, but I'll tell you this, and I'll tell everybody in this room: I am county and country before party, and it's important to me. We have got to bring people together, and as Republicans, we should work together and move our county forward and do what's best. And I have demonstrated day after day, year after year, of doing what's right and being a good steward of our funds at the high school, in our school district, working with families. And I think that's a priority, just being physically responsible but forward thinking. And I will continue to do that. And family values, I'm blessed to have a great family, and it's important to me that we support families in our community as well. And that will be something that we do going forward as well. But still being good stewards and being wise with that. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes.
Obviously, having served on the court through the recession of 08, I've always been a conservative, but at that time we had to look at new and innovative ways to save money. And we did do some things that were a bit hurtful to some employees. But we did that so that no employee was laid off. So to say I'm a fiscal conservative is an understatement. But what we must do is look at opportunities that come before us so that we can take advantage of things that are new, innovative ways of thinking to offer services to our community. Sometimes we get so hung up on being conservative that we don't look at new things. We look at pinching the penny and leaving the dime on the floor. So what we have to do is make sure we make wise investments with the money that the taxpayers pay this court, that the county works on. Our operating budget comes from two places, basically. Property taxes and net profits and payroll tax. And all of us complain about our property taxes. But folks, take a good look at it. There are 6 things on there. Your county government is not a big one. It runs very fluidly on a very low budget on property. Net profits and payroll are what pave the way for this community. What we need to do is to entice any way we can to bring new companies into this county, because that's what pays the bill. And I look forward to doing that as your next county judge.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Ms. Jones?
I think we all pretty much agree fiscal responsibility is a strong point, and it is for me. We have to be able to pay our bills. Any family or business and a government that's spending more money than they're taking in is not going to survive very long. That's pretty basic. I was reading the news graphic this morning, and there was a commentary by a gentleman that said that 2 + 2 equals 4. And you can't change it to 3 just by thinking happy thoughts. It's 4. It's going to equal 4 no matter what. So you have to have fiscal responsibility, and you have to be able to spend wisely and do not spend more than you take in.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, you have 2 minutes.
When you actually say, fiscal conservative, you're actually saying Mark Smith. In my record of service to Mallard Point Owners Association in the management and direction of that community since its inception, 29 years as the president, we never had a deficit budget in any of the 29 years. We're cash rich, we're debt free, and I'll promise everybody tonight, if so fortunate to be elected your next county judge, will operate this county cash rich and debt free. And it's not just what you've done, it's what you can do. And I've lived a life of giving and philanthropy. To have a record of that, from the establishment of the scholarship at Georgetown College for others, to the being placed as a lifetime member on the President's Club for Georgetown College, to giving all of the land to the Scott County school system for the building of Northern Elementary School. This was in 1990. From donating land to the Mallard Point Baptist Church, whose members also became the founders of Scott County's Habitat for Humanity. So fiscal responsibility, when you say that, you said Mark Smith. And I would offer my services, and I would offer my enthusiasm, and I would offer my energy as we help and choose the person who's going to lead this county forward into the next decade. We're going to be the fastest growing county in the Commonwealth. And ladies and gentlemen, experience, success is proven. And I thank you.
Thank you. The second question will begin with Mr. Hughes. Several years ago, the City of Georgetown voted to allow alcohol sales. Since then, the City Council and Mayor have managed the evolution of that decision. There have been failed attempts to bring such a vote to the county. What is your position on alcohol sales in Scott County? And if it were to ever come to a vote and pass, what benefits and or challenges do you foresee, and how would you navigate those as Judge Executive?
The one thing that brings to mind is the people of the community have the opportunity to vote on a wet dry election. So it's up to the people. If such a petition is brought to the fiscal court and with the right signatures, the correct number, I would vote to put it on the ballot. And if put on the ballot, there is a procedure through which a part of the tax money that you receive from those liquor sales can go to enhanced law enforcement. The city did that when they took advantage of this. So this is one of those opportunities that the citizens can decide. And if they choose to make Scott County wet, which would allow more restaurants out in the community, that will be a decision I would go with. But I personally will not put it on the ballot or go around with a petition to get enough signatures. With that said, Scott County has grown and has had great growth in our restaurant business. We're a model for anywhere in the state or in this area. We have many unique downtown opportunities. And if those businesses weren't allowed to serve alcohol, I would dare say they couldn't locate here. So if the people bring the right petition, I would vote to put it on the ballot.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
That's Sorry, sir, but that's pretty much what I was gonna say. We have a winery in Stamping Ground, and we had a petition that circulated throughout the precinct, and the folks that signed the petition said they would like to see it on the ballot. And once the required signatures, the numbers were met, it went on the ballot, the vote was in, and now we have a winery. So I think it's very important that the people are able to vote on this. It should be the people's decision. I would not stand in the way of it. And I would probably not advocate either way because both sides feel strongly, but it would definitely be something that the people would have to decide.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, ma'am. I would be supportive, obviously, in putting it on the ballot. I think it's, free choice of the public. But in the income, that was really a windfall for the city, and it's going to be substantial income if you have that in the county. I would direct the income first to the county employees. We have taken care of our fiscal responsibilities, fairly well. Obviously, we're cash rich and we're debt free. So any windfall in income, I would direct directly to the employees, and not just the law enforcement, but the fire, the detention center, the road department. All of these individuals. I don't think any of our salaries ever keeps up with the economy, at least in our minds. So I think we always need to put our county employees first, and any income from windfall, and quite frankly, I'd vote for it because it's an opportunity for the county and it's an opportunity for our employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Covington?
If the petition was brought forth and went to the ballot and it passed, I would certainly support that. And as we continue to grow, like we're going to, the challenge for us is for our services to match our growth, and that would be a stream of revenue that our county can take advantage of. But the other side of this is increased tourism opportunities. If there are alcohol sales available in the county, there's going to be building and retail and or restaurants that would have that opportunity to expand into the county, and we would need to maximize that for our county, and I think we would see a growth in tourism there as well. So that's where I would try to maximize and try to see how we can benefit our county as well in that aspect. But definitely an answer would be yes, if it was brought petition and on the ballot, I'd support it.
Thank you. Third question will begin with Ms. Jones. There's been much discussion of rainy day funds during Judge Lesby's time in office. According to Judge Lesby, Scott County currently has approximately $35 million in reserves and another $19 million in CDs. If you were to be elected, what would you propose to be an appropriate amount for rainy day funds, and for what specific purposes, if any, would you support spending them?
It's thrilling that we have that much in rainy day funds. I mean, there's not a lot of counties that do. And we're fortunate because of that. I really would hesitate to say that I want to cut into that. There's things that I think we need to do as a county, the things that I mentioned a while ago, but I would just throw an amount out that I think is appropriate for us to be able to spend. I think that would be something that we would have to discuss. There's 7 magistrates on the fiscal court along with the judge executive. You've got stakeholders across the county that all need things. They need bigger facilities, they need better equipment. Those are decisions that have to be made very slowly and very carefully and make sure you're doing the right thing.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
The rainy day fund that we have right now, we're getting ready to spend $14 million that's already been approved to be expended. So the next judge going into office is only going to have about $22 million. We have facilities in need that we'll be looking at, and I've got a plan that actually covers over 8 years. And we have a sheriff's office that's so overcrowded, it's tough to function. It's dilapidated, it's old, and I'm going to look at that as one of the first priorities. That will come into play with my plan for jail. I actually am going to propose to the court that we look at building a new sheriff's office. We look at building it over on Betsy Way. It's going to be close to the largest population center, the highest concentration of students in the new high school and in Western Elementary and future development. In doing that, there'll be a police presence there, so there should be added safety, at least in mind and thought, in our community. I'm also going to ask that 1,500 square feet of that be allocated to the coroner's office. Now, he's here tonight, he's never heard this before. But that would leave us 2 buildings directly across Hamilton Street that would be a footprint that will be larger than the jail existing today. It's going to be my recommendation to build a 100-bed jail. When we improved this jail, when we went from Water Street to the one we have now, we went from 25 beds to 86. And that's held us for 27 years. You build another 100-bed jail, and that should hold us for a while longer. Now, in doing that, once that jail is completed, we're going to connect those 2 buildings with an aerial pedway, which will be unique to Georgetown. We can move those the jail inmates over to the other jail, and then rehab the existing jail. The sheriff's office will cost between $3 to $4 million. The new jail that's proposed, that I'll propose, would be $8 to $10 million. Be $14 million over 8 years versus $14 million that we'll spend today.
Thank you. Mr. Covington?
My number 1 priority is to take care of our county workers, period. They deserve a comprehensive, competitive salary schedule. And that's where I believe that our focus should be to start with. The next thing and that has to be done in collaboration with the magistrates and all your constitutional officers and department heads. You have to sit down together and bring everybody to the table, and that has to be number 1. And then we look at sitting down together with the magistrates and different stakeholders and looking at capital projects and prioritizing capital projects. That is the way I would operate as judge executive. Listening to people, getting data, and then bringing everybody to the table and making decisions together. And that's the way I think that we should operate and move forward. But without a doubt, taking care of our county employees is a priority. And we have to work together to come up with a solution that is sustainable over time. And employees deserve to look and say, if I stay here, I'm going to make this much in 5 years. And they need to plan for their families, pay mortgages, and for college and education. So we have to take care of our people. And that's what I'll do as county judge executive. That's my answer.
Thank you, Mr. Covington. Mr. Hughes?
The short answer to this is you need between 6 and 9 months of money in the bank for a rainy day fund, and that should be adequate for most circumstances. And I think that would work here. But what we have is a little over 100 and some percent in the rainy day fund itself. A few things that everyone has touched on, and one is human resources and how to keep employees. Our EMS has lost roughly 50% of their personnel in the last 14 months. So we're constantly retraining new people to come into the system. Once they get a little accreditation, they move on to the next job because our pay scales are not adequate. So we need to set up a human resource division, probably a 1-person division. Then we need to create a career ladder so that employees that have been here a number of years are rewarded for their commitment to the county government. Also, we all know that every department head and every constitutional officer will tell you that they are stressed for room in their current facilities. What I propose is that everyone submits their needs, not their wants, but their needs. And the judge, the fiscal court, and that department head or constitutional officer will do an evaluation. And we will prioritize the ones most pressing, the ones that we can do quickly, the ones that may take a few years in planning. We're not going to spend this money foolishly, but we're going to invest it in this community so that we meet the needs of our citizens. That's what I plan to do as your next county judge.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. The next question will begin with Mr. Smith. Many of you have published opinions regarding our county employees and your support of them. It is easy to say you support our employees and want them to feel appreciated, but your job as county judge executive will not always be that easy. Please share with us any areas of county government you feel need to be trimmed and any areas you feel need to be expanded from a human resource standpoint. Then share with us specifically how you would better use the savings from trimming and/or where you would locate the additional revenue for added staff.
You know, in the fastest growing county in the Commonwealth, I don't see any areas that need to be trimmed that we're even capable of trimming at this point in time. I've met with every department head, and I agree that all are strapped. I see, like I say, I see two areas that are in need. That's the sheriff's office and the jail. But that's an expansion. That's not a reduction. I think that we need to, just like this year in our budget, there was the state, we have to go up on our retirement. Our contributions to hazardous duty went up to 48%. It's going to cost the county another $1.2 million this year. I know the county put that in the budget. Then the Senate and the House also passed a bill that said there's going to be a phase-in. So we'll only have to spend 12.5% of that. That's $1 million that we save this year that's already in the budget. I say take that $1 million and meet with all the heads. Have them, in my discussions with the fire department, I met with them just the other day. They said, we need a pay structure, we need this. I said, well, then you need to develop that. I said, we'll help you. You know, you have a starting firefighter that's $900 in the county, less pay than he is in the city. That is where we can start, from the bottom and move up. But like I say, the money that we have saved, $1 million on this phase-in, let's earmark that for the employees. You know, employees are our greatest asset. When the judge looks good, when the magistrates look good, it's because the employees have done a great job. And so anything we can do for them, obviously, they're your first priority. Your physical priorities, facilities, I've already stated.
Thank you. Mr. Covington.
You know, our constitutional officers, our county clerk, sheriff, or jailer, etc., and all our department heads have spent many, many hours on that budget, and our magistrates have collaborated and worked many, many hours. I've reviewed the draft and what was at the last meeting, and you know, I think that document is well prepared, and those people have done their due diligence. I don't see, with us being the fastest growing community in Kentucky, there's not very much fat in there, and trimming it is not something that I would do based on my review. You know, expanding it, going forward, you would have to sit down and collaborate with all those people, all those stakeholders, and prioritize a list of needs and look at where our growth's going. Where does the next firehouse go? Those type of questions to most efficiently provide services to our county. I met with J.R. Brandenburg, and the funds that we have to pave new roads every summer have been about the same for the last decade. That has to grow. We can't continue to, we have to be forward thinking and expand those areas to match our growth and take care of our infrastructure in that respect. And there are priorities that need to be, because we do need new capital projects, but you have to sit down, you gotta listen to people, you gotta get data, and then you gotta make decisions and then go from there.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes.
Obviously, we all agree that trimming is not maybe something we can do growing as quickly as we are. We need to look at each department with that officer or a constitutional officer or department head and find what levels of staffing we can do most efficiently to do things. This is a great opportunity for us to think outside the box and how we provide our services, doing things a little differently than we have in the past. You know, if you add one firefighter per station, that's 4 per shift. We have 3 shifts. That gets expensive pretty quickly. Can we think of another way to do it and still provide the services that we need for our community? I think we can, but this is an opportunity to work with not only the fire chief, but head of EMS, the road department. As Mr. Covington said, we're still using the same dollars today as we were 7 years ago for the number that we do paving with. The roads are breaking down just as quickly as they ever did, so we need to make sure that we keep up, so we don't fall so far behind that it's very difficult to keep up in the future. The other part of that is to get the constitutional officers, the department heads, and the employees to come up with their ideas, how we can make their departments more efficient. You know, adding 12 employees is not going to be a great efficiency, but maybe we can do something different, and we have to ask and be willing to accept their opinions and see how we can make those things work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
I would not be in favor of trimming the budget in any way, and we do have some hot button issues that we've talked about. And as far as a new jail, I don't think anyone can happily embrace the idea of a newer and bigger jail. What we want are safer streets, less crime, secure homes and property, and the amount of tax dollars that are being spent providing care for lawbreakers is astounding. I would like to see some of that money go towards some programs that might help with these repeat offenders that keep coming through because of the drug conditions that we have in our society. We all want more personal responsibility as conservatives, and I strongly believe that. And we want people to know that their life is up to them, and they pull yourself up by the bootstraps and make your way. But we do have some folks that could have a successful life if we have some programs in place that might be able to help them get a better start. So another thing I think is important is working with our legislatures about some of the home incarceration sentences that people get. There are some viable alternatives as far as the jail population, and I do know that Darren Royals, our jailer, is working on a program. I don't know how far along he is or anything, but he is trying to work, because that seems to be the biggest influx of the return prisoners is the drug problem. So that's my answer. I think that we need to look at some alternatives that we may have not looked at in the past, or we may have looked at them, but we need to look at them again. And I haven't worked in the corrections field, so I think it's important to work with folks that have. We need to know all the facts on this. We can't just say, I have a plan, this is what we're going to do. That's just not good business, and it doesn't make sense.
Thank you. The final of the prepared questions will be back around to you, Mr. Covington. Many of us here tonight were already at least somewhat familiar with you personally and or professionally. And so far you have each done a great job of displaying your qualifications for the position. Now please tell us specifically how you believe your personal background and professional experience sets you apart from the other candidates.
Every 2 years, every teacher in the Commonwealth of Kentucky fills out a TEL survey. And it's an anonymous survey about school environment, culture, climate, and leadership. I'm going to speak to the leadership part of it. They can answer, they agree, disagree, strongly agree. And when talking about leadership at Scott County High School, in our last TEL survey in regards to my leadership, 94% of our teachers responded that we had an atmosphere. They responded, they agreed or strongly agreed that we had an atmosphere of trust and respect. 94% of those teachers. 97% of those same teachers responded that leadership and staff have a shared vision. I work daily to gain trust and relationships, build positive relationships with people. And that's how you bring people to the table and move people, by doing that. And then 97% of the same teachers felt leadership uses data to improve. You have to use facts when we're making decisions. And if I'm your county judge, I will use facts. I will bring people to the table. We will get business done that way in a collaborative nature. And that's the best way to do business. And you can't fool teachers, and you can't fool kids. And I think that speaks to my qualifications. Those facts, that data, those respondents make me the best candidate for the next county judge's race.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes?
Having served 8 years on the court, I built a working relationship with other magistrates on the court, other constitutional officers, and the department heads, and employees. You know, when you move forward to try to get these things to happen, you have to bring people along with you. It can be your idea, it can be a great idea, but you have to get people to buy into the idea. With that said, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You have to be the person that picks the best idea in the room. Sometimes we let our egos get in our way and we think we have to have all the best ideas. One thing I've learned over 45 years in agriculture, being a parent and grandparent, is I don't always have the best idea. You have to be willing to accept that. Let your pride suffer a little bit. But take that idea, work with those people, and try to implement it. You know, leadership is one of those things that when you talk about yourself, it doesn't always ring true. So when other people say that you're a leader, that's what's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Well, no one in the county. Sorry. No one in the county right now has judge executive experience except for the person that's in the position right now. But I do have experience in handling the unknown. I can manage obstacles. I've worked to stretch taxpayer dollars, stay true to convictions. I mean, I love working with people, but anybody that really knows me knows that you can't be so open-minded that your brain falls out. You've got to be true to your convictions. I have a willingness to work with a team approach. I have experience in working with stakeholders, government agencies, legislators, and I'm enthusiastic about Scott County. I've heard a lot of talk about what's wrong with Scott County, but we have a great place here, and I love it, and it's my home. And I think we can get even better high quality of life, and always to be searching for continued improvement. There's always room for that. And I'm really good at putting the right people in the right places. There's extraordinary results when you do that.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
My entire life has been spent providing service. I'm the only candidate that's ever built roadways, tens of miles of roadways. Scott County has 280 miles of road. That's a large part of our budget. I can look at a failure on a piece of roadway and tell you with great degree of accuracy what caused it. I can also look at it and tell you with a great degree of accuracy what it's going to cost to fix it. And the correct way to fix it to where we don't have to go back there and fix it again in 2 years. The service provisions of water, sewer, everything that I have done for 30 years is all service to the community, service to my community. And it's that unique experience that will allow me to have a greater oversight as your next Scott County judge. The planning and development of communities. I met with the mayor and we talked about the growth and where the problems have been in the last 30 years. And it's been where development oftentimes, and unless checked, it gets out in front of the infrastructure. And whether it be roads, whether it be water, whether it be sewer, whatever it is. And we need to, as governmental entities, the county and the city, need to take oversight of planning and zoning to know what's going on, to know what's coming in. Or we're not going to be able to preserve the small town charm that we love as being Georgetown. It's what brought me here and what keeps me here. We're not going to be able to preserve the charm, and we're going to become a little Lexington, which I don't think is what anybody wants here. My personal interest in Scott County and my love for this community has led to my personal investment in this community. The tens of millions of dollars that I have put back in this community speaks volumes. I could be anywhere. I could do anything. I could have chosen any community. But I chose Georgetown, Kentucky, because it's the community that's been my home, where I've raised my children, and where I want to call home in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, we will begin the next round of questions with you, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond just as before. Describe your relationship with our elected officials in Frankfort and why you're best suited to protect our needs at the state level.
One of the things I've done over the past 25 years is cultivate a working relationship with whomever our elected officials were. I say this with a little jab here this afternoon. I'm no one's boy. I'm my own man. And I have worked to have a relationship with all elected officials, county, state, and federal. And I'm proud of that, because what that brings to the table is opportunities that those different entities can bring to Scott County. There are federal roads here, there are state roads. We have to work with those people. If you look at the budget that was just passed in the legislature, Scott County fared very well in our road system. That's important because state roads, the money that's in those budgets is very tight. As we all know, there's a gasoline tax, and over the past few years it fell dramatically. Thankfully, it's stabilized. But where those tax dollars go is a function of our leaders in Frankfort. If we did not have the leadership in Frankfort that we currently have, I would dare say we would not be getting this much of a share of the road fund. So building a relationship with state representatives, state senators, other constitutional officers at the state level and federal levels needs to be done, and needs to be done in a way that we respect one another and we respect the limits that one another has in their individual area. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
I think that's a very, very important thing. We have to be able to build strong relationships with the folks in Frankfort, county, city, everything. We depend on each other to succeed. And when we have something happen in Stamping Ground, we need road work, I know who to call. They know me. We talk back and forth. We discuss our issues. They tell me what they can do to help us and what they can't do. There was a storm a couple of years ago, and a huge tree. It was kind of like a giant sequoia, it looked like, but it fell across the street. And we had all of our traffic backed up in the middle of this terrible storm, and we knew who to call, and we had them out there, and they were working in the rain, but we got it done. I mean, you have to be able to have these people that you know you can count on, and I do have that, and that's one of my really things that I focus on is building relationships with people and being able to help them, and they help us, and we all succeed together.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
It's been my pleasure to get to know our state representatives and our senator, and I think we have a good contingent. We have great representation in Frankfort. I know that they try to stay in contact with the business leaders and the entire community, and it was through my term as president of the Chamber of Commerce that I got to know Philip and Damon better, and Mark Hart, and Representative Linder, and I think it is relationships. And I think that if both of us, if we're all pushing the cart in the same direction, it's very easy for us to help. We don't have to agree on every issue, but if we want to move Scott County forward, whether it be at the state level, the county level, it's going to take us all. And whether it's our elected representative, countywide, it's all relationship. But like I say, it's a joint effort, and we do get together, and we do talk, and we do share in the community forums that they put on. They also speak at Scott County United. I know that we have in Scott County United given them our recommendations, and they have been very receptive. I know as a chamber we have given them our recommendations, what we would like to see passed, what we would like to see them get behind. And it's been a great relationship that we've had in those institutions. And I'm pleased to have had some of those relationships with President past for up to 30 years.
Thank you. Mr. Covington?
Question of relationships with elected officials in Frankfort. My circles do not intersect a whole lot other than cordial, friendly conversations and running together community events and such. But I have a track history of being able to build relationships and develop relationships. But I will say this, and I believe that our elected officials in Frankfort represent everyone in this county, and they should represent our county and do what's best for everybody in that county. And I think we should work together and in a collaborative effort. As county judge, I'm going to look at the big picture, and I'm going to go to those officials and move us in one direction together. And a strength that I do have is being able to forge those relationships, because I believe that people trust me, and I'm going to make. I have a history of doing what's right and making decisions that's for everybody involved. So that's what my best answer is.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, the next audience question will begin with you. What is your position on needle exchange?
I support it. I feel like, there are pros and cons to anything, but the overwhelming proof is that these programs do help. And we can throw money left and right to incarcerate folks, to take care of them, feed them. But if we can do something like that may help progress them into a different direction, I think it's a viable option, and then we should by all means pursue it. If it doesn't work, we'll find out, but we're already throwing money anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I'd like to see a greater structure to what's been recommended. Given that, I'm not opposed to considering that.
Thank you. Mr. Covington?
Here's the number one question. Do needle exchange programs reduce the spread of hepatitis C and HIV? And the answer is yes. So we're going to have to sit down with the court and make a decision what's best for our community. And if that does it, if that reduces hepatitis C and HIV, then that's what we should do for the greater good. And hammering out this or that on an ordinance or resolution, whatever it might be, I believe our magistrates would sit down and listen to that. But when asking that question about the needle exchange, does it reduce hepatitis C and does it reduce the spread of HIV? And the answer is yes. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes?
One of my first concerns when I heard about the needle exchange, my wife is an ER nurse at Georgetown Community Hospital. So I worry about when someone comes to the door with an OD and you reach to get that person out of the car, is there a needle in their pocket? When our EMS goes to some place because they're having an overdose and they try to pick someone up and roll them over, are they going to get stuck by a dirty needle? Same with our sheriff's office or police officers. I think that the devil is in the details. I think we can work those details out. But first and foremost, I was always worried about those who were innocent. And I think that's something we have to look at. But we can't have just an open door. I think that the details can be worked out, and I think I can vote for one with the right details. But we can't have just an open exchange where you come in and bring one needle and you get 100 back. So we have to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next audience question is for you, we'll begin with you, Mr. Smith, sorry. And I'm going to struggle with this handwriting, so I beg your forgiveness. The county just voted to spend $3.5 million on the business park expansion. That means that the county will need $700 million in payroll to break even. Do you see this as a wise expenditure for county taxpayers?
Well, I don't know that those figures are exactly correct. Okay, that's I think they're way off. I support the business park. I will always support the business park and the expansion thereof. As we raise our families here, do we want our children to go elsewhere, or do we want managed growth? We want jobs for our children to be able to remain where they grew up, remain here at home. I'd like for our children to have opportunities. The business park, dollars turned 28 times. Is what I understand. So I think that when you have industry, it turns 8 times before it settles. But ladies and gentlemen, this is such a great opportunity. The jobs that we're going to have come in there, the different businesses. I know that we're trying to diversify from automotive, but when you have Toyota, when you have Lakers in your back door, it's so extremely tough. But we have other opportunities, and we do. I know Jack has worked for years, and I worked with him through the chamber to try to attract these different businesses. We're sold out, in what we have today, and isn't it great? And the last time the city paid for 100% of the expansion of the business park or the development of it, This time, the city's paying half and the county's paying half. You know, so we're moving in great directions. And the county, I would always be supportive of funding for economic expansion. And obviously, expansion even past this point of the business park.
Thank you. Mr. Covington?
100% support the continued expansion of the Lanes Run Business Park. It is my belief and my understanding that we would not have, Toyota would not have the Lexus line, BCTC would not be sitting where it is today and giving our community the opportunities that they have if we did not have that. And I would even propose to go one step further. As Judge Executive, I would try to collaborate in partnership with BCTC in our community to form a skilled trades academy right there in the business park. We are the fastest growing community in Kentucky. We need people that have HVAC, electricity, plumbing, carpentry, those skilled trades. We need to train them right here in Georgetown. And our construction industry, they can't find enough people to help build houses and do those things. And as a county judge executive, that's the kind of thinking, forward thinking that you would get from me, trying what else can we do to expand opportunities. But that is a real need, and we have to diversify opportunities and continue to look for different businesses and opportunities for our community. And we cannot continue to grow if we don't have that.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes?
I would also question the numbers because we don't know exactly what's going to be built on that facility and what those tax returns would be coming back to the county. But when we talk about BCTC, a number of years ago when Mayor Prather and I were on the fiscal court together, county government bought the very property that BCTC sits on today and held on to that property for 7 years until BCTC was built. That's the type of thing you do because there are opportunities there. The business park, to whatever level is full, we need to entice more businesses, more opportunities into our community. Everything that we do, as I stated earlier, tax revenues come from those who employ people. The business park is our best opportunity to reach out to different entrepreneurs who would think that in the business park we have a brewery and a BCTC campus and several other facilities. Diversity is great, and I think that's what we can do with this park, and I'm glad that we're moving forward with the city to fund it jointly because the county has always collected taxes off of it.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Well, I'm not gonna debate the point with these gentlemen. I agree, it's a no-brainer. We really need to keep investing, and I'm very proud that we're able to do this. When Mr. Covington talks about the programs and trying to get the kids trained for different occupations, I think it's very important. That's something we definitely have to do. Anyone in skilled trades right now that knows that there is a very high, you're having trouble finding kids that just can learn the jobs, and I think it's something that we definitely need in Scott County. So I think the Lanes Run Business Park investment is a good idea.
Thank you. The next audience question will begin with Mr. Covington. Mr. Covington, what are your thoughts on reducing the salary of the county judge executive and magistrates?
The salaries of constitutional officers are set by state statute. And if you want to talk, we have no control over that, my understanding. The magistrates, every 4 years, they have to set the next 4 years' salary for the magistrates. And, I know that a lot of people don't see the work that they do in the background. I think that it's a fine line. You have a big range in Kentucky of magistrate salaries, and where it was set now was based on 4 years ago from the previous court, and it was brought up to reduce it, and the magistrates discussed it. They decided to vote and not reduce it, but they took away the consumer price index, and they felt like that was, a good, I guess, middle of the road agreement. That's the part of the budget. They've talked about it. They've said it, and I'm comfortable with the position that they're in now.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes?
The constitutional officers, the maximum is set by the state, but each constitutional officer can choose to take less if they so choose. As far as the magistrate pay, I have told those magistrates and others who have talked to me that I didn't find that their pay was too low, but simply that we were paying some of our people too little. So what we need to do is to work to bring those people who are working 35, 40, and the 24, 48 shifts, we need to bring their level of pay up. That's when I talk about a career ladder and those things that we need to do there. I served as a magistrate for 8 years. If you do your due diligence, and I believe those on this court do that today, they can make that decision in 4 years whether they're overpaid or not. The people can vote on that. They can decide that they didn't like the vote that they took. I don't believe that they're overpaid, but I simply believe that what we need to look at is bringing those full-time employees, county employees, bringing their salaries up to match competitive wages in other counties. As I was knocking on doors the other day, I ran across an EMS person who left Scott County a number of years ago. And if they went to Lexington or someplace, it would be different. They went to Woodford County for a significant amount of money more than they were making here in Scott County. Now, most of us know Woodford County pretty well, and they don't have nearly as much positive going on as we do in this community. So what we need to do is make sure we keep good, qualified employees, and that's what I propose to do.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
I'm not opposed to a pay cut. I think that it's something that can be looked at. I do feel like the judge executive and the magistrates have a great deal of responsibility that a lot of people might not know of, that you really need to be paid quite well for that responsibility, because there's a lot to do. But as to your question, I'm not opposed to looking at the pay structure.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I think the pay structure is set by the state, in that the county judge, the jailer, the sheriff, county clerk, all really make the same dollars. I'm okay with the pay structure. Don't have any problem moving forward.
Great, thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Hughes. One of the major financial issues facing county government is how best to tackle overcrowding in our local detention center. Please take a moment and share with us specifically how you believe this issue should be resolved and how you would go about getting it done if you were elected county judge.
My approach is pretty simple. I am not running to be jailer. The jailer is the jailer. What I would propose to do is to form a committee immediately consisting of the county judge, the jailer, 2 magistrates, and probably 2 citizens from the community. We would also include in that the Department of Corrections and AOC to find out what limiting factors are, what we need to do, and how to move forward. But I'm not the jailer, and I'm not with AOC, the Administrative Office of the Courts. So I don't know the interlocking workings. But what we need to do is form a committee, move this thing forward, and get the information. There can be ideas that were presented here tonight that may be the best idea. But we need to vet all ideas and find out which ones are most appropriate for Scott County and how to move forward. This process is going to take a substantial amount of time, and we do have that time right now. But if we continue to delay and not study this issue, we're going to be behind the curve, and that's what we don't want to be. So I propose that we form a committee, take all the interested parties, and see if we can move this thing to a conclusion. And then at that time, it has to come back to the fiscal court, the entire court, to see what their priorities are. So that's my solution.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
I think I pretty well touched on this a few minutes ago. From talking to the various people that are associated with the detention center and talking to the jailer, I've talked to Judge Lesby, I think the general consensus is something needs to be done. Deciding the best route, we're all going to kind of disagree on which way to go, but there's folks talking about going up. Let's build on top. Is the structure going to be able to do that? It was supposed to have been built for an addition when it was built in '91. Build out. There's a parking lot there. Go to a whole new location. I mean, there's a lot of things being tossed around, but you do need to give it some study and you know, I don't want to spend a lot of money on studies. I like jumping in and getting things done, but sometimes something like this, you really need to know what you're dealing with, and some of the things that the jail deals with, we don't know about. We had a tour yesterday of the jail. We went through it. The jailer was kind enough to explain things, and there's a lot of state regulations. There's so much more than just the layperson can grasp on what we have to do to be able to do it right and do it lawfully. So I do think we need to look at it, and we do need to get a plan together, because it's only going to get worse.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I'm glad this came up again, and I'm glad I shared a little bit of what my idea was momentarily a few moments ago. But you know, I've done a lot of due diligence on this, and I think the county judge is for leadership. Now, the only discussion on the jail and proposals for the expansion of the jail, this came up more than a year ago, and it was discussed in open court of a 300-bed facility, proposal of a 300-bed facility, at the cost estimates of $100,000 per bed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't make these figures up. This came directly from the county judge. This came directly from George, as he's sharing this with me. I can distinctly recall, almost, many months ago, maybe not quite a year, when we had magistrates here tonight, when the judge asked, I'm interested to see who will make a motion to approve spending $30 million on the jail. Now, when you hear $30 million, and we have, the next judge is going to have a $22 million rainy day fund. That means to move forward on a 300-bed jail, which I termed a regional jail. We only have 86, 87 Scott County inmates in our jail right now. So it would have to be filled up from the region. To me, in semantics, it's a regional jail. But it would take 100% of our rainy day fund and then put this county in millions of dollars worth of debt. So I do due diligence. I think, what could a plan be? What could we do as a county to move forward? And the best information that I can get and gain from not only George, but from the state, is to propose a 100-bed facility. Like I said, when we approved our facility from Water Street, it was a 25-bed jail. And we went up to 86 beds, and this benefited us, this lasted us 27 years. But when we move the sheriff's office, when we move that area, it's going to be a $3 to $4 million project there. When we build the new jail, that would be an $8 to $10 million project. We can rehab the old jail. It would give us room for an opiate clinic to take care of that problem in the community, because we would have that excess availability.
Thank you. Mr. Covington?
Why is the jail full or overcrowded? That's question number one. We got to get the data. Well, I went 2 months ago, and Darren was kind enough, I toured the jail, and we need to address that issue. But the approach that we address that issue is I'm very similar to Stuart on this. I'm not the jailer. Darren Broyles is an excellent professional person, and he was, any question I asked, he had answers for. He shared with me that approximately 70% of our inmates are there because of nonviolent drug-related crimes. We can't incarcerate our way out of this issue, the opiate crisis, the drug crisis. So we have to look at the core problem. What's the core root of the problem? And we have to address it there. And some of our magistrates, Mr. Livingston, they've taken a group to Richmond and looked at a model that they're looking at, and it's treating those nonviolent drug offenders in a different facility possibly. But my solution would be very similar to Mr. Hughes. We'd form a committee, we'd include stakeholders, the jailer, who is a professional jailer, knows his business, has been elected to that constitutional office, and the people of this county trust him to do that job. We're gonna work with him, we're gonna get magistrates, we're gonna get community members, and in my opinion, healthcare provider as well. And look at the problem, address it, and then come up with some solutions, and make some options, and then go from there, and take it to the court, and make an informed decision.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, we'll begin the next question with you. The 2018 Kentucky Annual Economic Report indicates our roads and bridges are among some of the best maintained in the state. Still, no infrastructure is perfect, and maintenance is crucial. Please share with us what you believe to be the top priorities for our road department in the next 2 years, and how you would prioritize those.
Well, I have talked to some folks about our infrastructure in Scott County, and we are doing really well. We really are. We do have problems. Some of our bridges and roads are pretty old and they need continual maintenance. Last month in Miami, there was a bridge that collapsed and 6 people lost their lives. And that should be a wake-up call that we continually need to make sure that our infrastructure is updated and maintained. I would not have a go-to place that I think we would just jump onto immediately. There is a road, Lexus Way, that we could maybe look at connecting to Old Oxford that would relieve a lot of congestion over at Cherry Blossom, especially at shift change time. I think that's worth looking into with the city. Maybe the county and the city can work together to try to relieve that situation a little bit. That would probably be highest on my list because of the safety issues right there.
Great, thank you.
Would you restate your question?
Absolutely,
again?
not a problem at all. The 2018 Kentucky Annual Economic Report indicates our roads and bridges are among some of the best maintained in the state. Still, no infrastructure is perfect and maintenance is crucial. Please share with us what you believe to be the top priorities for our road department in the next 2 years and how you would prioritize those. Mr. Smith.
Well, I think that in my discussions with JR and the judge and whatnot, and my relationship with him over the last probably 20 years, I think they do a good job in routinely moving from, arranging their priorities and taking care of that year to year. My priority would be in snow removal. In inclement weather, as always, the state, for whatever reason, on US 25 North, from Delaplane North, took off of a priority list 2 years ago. So when it starts snowing, they'll do the road up to Delaplane, then from Delaplane North, from Mallory Point, Harbor Village, West Woods, Autumn Hills, Deer Run, that is the second largest population center in Scott County outside the city of Georgetown. You have over 2,900 people live in that area. So, and the state doesn't even do snow removal on that. So I would, there's over 40 subdivisions in the county and, they're on county roads. And so these would all be priorities for me moving forward. I think they do a great job on the roads. We don't really get out on, roadways in the county that are in bad repair. The worst we had was Double Culvert. That was $400,000 of tax dollars spent to improve that over the landfill. Their trucks and traffic down there destroying it. I think that's wrong. That's a fee that I think ought to be an impact fee placed on the landfill or the users. But anyway, my one priority would be snow removal because I think they do a great job on maintenance of roadways today.
Great, thank you. Mr. Covington.
I believe, I've met with JR, and I believe that what we should look at is making the yearly budget a little bit bigger to meet to expand how many miles we can repave on a yearly consistent basis. And that way we're staying ahead of hopefully growth and maintenance. So that, that would be a way that we would be forward thinking and using taxpayer dollars as efficiently as possible to kind of get ahead, but expanding their budget to be able to pay more miles every summer. And that would be a priority for me. But, I would defer, we have a professional crew right there, professional director, and you know, he's driving it every day, and he knows it. And it's a big responsibility, because if we don't have good roads, then everything it slows down for sure. So that would be my priority.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes?
I would agree with what the gentleman say. Add some money to the budget for additional resurfacing to county roads. Mayor, I will tell you that we haven't really expanded it in a number of years, and the cost of materials have not gone up significantly, but have gone up some. So we're resurfacing less roads or less mileage than we have 10 years ago. So obviously we need to do that. Another thing we need to think about on county roads is that many of the county roads in this community have been built out far beyond the means the road has to take care of that traffic. Where possible, maybe we can look at putting a small edge on some of these roads. We've done that in the past. It's not always been great, but it gives us an opportunity to pass other neighbors on our small county roads that we have. The one thing I will say about snow removal, I live on a road that status was changed as well, so we don't get snow removal quickly by the state either. So I get a phone call and they ask me about snow removal, and they say, well, the road I live on is completely clear, but I turned on 227 and it's covered in snow. And I said, well, that's because you live on a county road and you have to drive to town on a state road. It's kind of hard to get them to change that, but that's something we need to look at. The one thing about the state road department, they tell you about their snow plan in July, they tell you about their mowing plan in December. So they plan on you not remembering what they told you 6 months previously. So I think what we need to do is some additional money for resurfacing more county roads.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. The next question will begin with Mr. Smith. Recent events over the past year have shown us that no community is immune to tragedy, violence, or catastrophe, both natural and man-made. What role do you believe county government plays in being proactive and safeguarding against such events? And what specifically do you believe our county should be doing to improve our response to such events?
Well, I don't think the county government can have any effect or authority over tornadoes or storms or natural disasters. I was just at our Homeland Security Department, and I met with Ms. Jack and Donovan and whatnot and his staff, and could not have been more impressed than their setup out there and their preparedness. I know that we only have 2 full-time employees there, but we have 10 part-time. That may be something as we move forward as a community that we look at expanding. I know that once again, their salaries. I think the rolling stock is fine. They didn't have any issues with that. But it's something, moving forward as a county, we need to stay ahead of the curve. And something that, I thought went without saying here, and I'd like to let everybody know that it's foremost in my mind. The county judge cannot do anything by and to itself. The county judge needs the support of all the magistrates, okay, or at least the majority of them on any issue. And the judge, in my mind, gives direction to the county, is leadership. And I don't believe that, I've never been one that managed by committee. Okay, there are elected officials who have that authority to lead the community. We have to get input. We have to get cooperation. But you have to have direction, and you have to have leadership. As far as natural disasters, I think we're fairly well prepared at this point in time. The fire department, I know there's nothing in this budget for rolling stock for the fire department. There has been nothing in the county budget for rolling stock of the fire department. There's been no new trucks repaired the last 3 years. The next judge is going to have his hands full in all departments. But I think we need to keep our departments on the cutting edge and always ahead of the curve.
Thank you. Mr. Covington.
We have a professional director with Jack Donovan, and they're really top notch in my belief. But as county judge, what can I do to help them and provide opportunities, provide funds for training with all agencies, EMS, fire, county fire, city fire, sheriff, Georgetown Police. That's how you support that sector, is funds for training, and as county judge, I would work with the magistrates to make sure that those funds for training continue to be there and expanded if needed. And, you know, just not too long ago, the train wreck, you know, I think it was evident how prepared, you know, our services were and how professionally they handled that. And hats off to them. And just another example of how we need to support them and how important they are to our community. And we have to match, you know, our growth needs to our funding needs to match that growth for that sector as well.
Good, thank you. Mr. Hughes?
You know, Jack Donovan has done a really good job with that department, and as it's been stated, it's a two-man department with some part-timers and some volunteers. And, you know, the train wreck is the best example of the preparedness of Scott County as to what can happen. Who could have imagined that we would have such a thing happen? Fortunately, there were no hazardous materials on that train or anyone had to be evacuated. There were some evacuations, but they were precautionary. The level of expertise that we have is top-notch. What we do have is cooperation through that department and the fire departments, the sheriff's office, the police department. So to that level, we are one of the better ones in the state. But can we do better? Sure, there's always things we can do. And I'm sure Mr. Donovan would be glad to share that one of the things on his list is a new facility, portable facility that would replace the one that's 30+ years old that he currently has. That those of you in this room who remember Sid Heisel, Mr. Heisel made that purchase for the mobile command unit. But with that said, the people that we have in place are excellent, and we're very fortunate to have them.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
I think we are blessed to have Jack Donovan and Mike Hennigan and the part-time folks. I think that we do need to continue the training because things are evolving. We're facing issues and challenges now that we didn't a few years ago. We need to be prepared for terroristic activities. We need to be prepared for maybe a chemical attack. We need to be prepared for our water maybe being contaminated. There's so many things that we need to be proactive about. And it is important to stay educated and on top of these issues, whether you're in Georgetown or you're in New York. It can happen anywhere, and I would support any kind of education for our first responders.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Covington. Our county has experienced unprecedented growth in recent years. Please share with us one positive and one negative aspect of that growth and what role you feel county government should play in promoting and improving those aspects, respectively.
You know, quality of life, opportunities, expanded, you know, just retail, restaurant opportunities. You know, we've gone through phases in Scott County. We've had industrial growth. Now we've had rooftops. And now we're in a phase of retail, expanded retail opportunities. And I think that's a plus. You know, traffic continues to be something that has to be addressed. If you drive through North Hamilton Broadway in Maine at 4:30 on any day, you know, but, you know, thankfully, the last part of the bypass is planned, and that construction will start soon, and hopefully that will alleviate some of it. But we have to be, you know, we have to look at how can we help that, and we have to look with our partners in Frankfort how to adjust traffic. And I think that would be a lot of our concerns with our citizens as well. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes?
Some of the positives are simply the businesses that have decided to locate here in the last few years. I mentioned earlier the brewery. We have 2 local restaurants downtown that rival any in central Kentucky. You know, that type of vibrancy in our downtown, when you compare it to other communities in our neighborhood, is something to be proud of. You know, the 2 things that really are negatives to me is it's great that people move in here because we have a welcoming situation for them, but I would think Dr. Hub and his staff would say that the relocation of many school-aged children has put a great burden on the school system as far as planning and how to move forward there. Joe was right, Joe Powell was right, traffic, I happen to live on Long Lake Pike, so we have an elementary school, 2 middle schools, and a high school, so you need to plan your trip to town accordingly, because if you don't, you may as well just stay home and take a nap for that half an hour. Those are the things that we need to work on. We're going to get the last leg of the bypass, and hopefully that will alleviate some of this traffic that's on 25 and Champion Way and these type things. But there has to be greater planning with our planning commission and the traffic that is going to come from development when that happens.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
We do have growing pains. I think any town does that experience the growth that we have. There's a lot of good things about it, there really is, and we're in a good place right now. But the Kentucky General Assembly authorized in 2016, authorized public-private partnership to finance, construct, and operate new public projects. And what this does, this opens the door for governments and private entities to be able to work together on projects, and that was not the case before. So I'm interested in looking into that because that would make us be able to expand our infrastructure a great deal more to be able to handle the traffic that we are experiencing. And it would benefit Scott County to be able to look into that.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
To give one positive and one negative, the positives are just numerous. When I first moved to Scott County, we only had 3 restaurants here. You had Fives, you had Jerry's, and you had McDonald's. And, so our opportunities, in restaurants and retail have just blossomed. It's great to be able to get most of your shopping done and never leave town, not have to drive to Lexington and get into that deal. The industry, the jobs, the communities that have developed, many are just such a great asset to Scott County. They're just too numerous to mention. The negative, though, is, as I inferred earlier, is you have growth sometimes outpacing your services, where you have development that is such a pace. A perfect example is the Oxford Road. You have overcrowded roads right now. You have roadways that aren't sufficient to take care of it, and that's because no one had the oversight of planning and zoning, okay, to have to stage this. Work it out. Are there impact fees for development? That's something to explore. Developers, and I've been one, they have a cost recovery in the price of their lives. Why should the community support the construction of infrastructure for private business? Whoa, that's almost taboo for a developer to say, but by the same token, what's right, ladies and gentlemen, is right. It's the right thing to do. It may not be the most popular in our circles, but it's the right thing to do. And so, I've talked to Tom, the city and the county need to get together. They have to have oversight of this growth. That Oxford Road that I just referenced, it's overcrowded today. The city has asked the county to think about, which I'm not for, contributing to the cost of improving that roadway. And there's 1,500 more homes already approved to be built.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Hughes. Agriculture and manufacturing are the two largest industries in Scott County. While they are oftentimes seen in opposition to one another, our county has been forced to find and maintain a delicate balance. As County Judge Executive, what specifically will you do to be sure both industries thrive in Scott County?
Well, having grown up my entire life in one of those industries, I hope I have some ideas there. When we talk about regulating growth and we all want to maintain the hometown environment that we have, the one thing you have to remember about many people who own the land, that is their 401k. So any changes we make to zoning laws affects their retirement and how they are able to retire. But with that said, we can move forward. There are systems in place that we can take advantage of A few years back, we did a set aside that you can do. There are set asides that conservation easements that landowners can do, but they aren't very cost effective for the landowner themselves. Manufacturing has worked well here. It has eaten up a lot of land, a lot of really good agricultural land. But what we have to do is formulate a way that we can have a tax incentive for those people who own property to keep that property in agriculture. A friend of mine once said, Taylor Cannon said this, if you want land to be preserved, give the farmer an opportunity to make a living off of it. So that's what we have to do. So if there's a way, and I voted against continuing the program that set aside money, but if we can find a way, and the citizens of this community want to do it, we can find a way to set aside ag land with either exemptions or some other mechanism so that we retain the beauty of this community.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Yes, we already have a purchase of developmental rights in place. It's not being funded right now, and that is something I think is very important, that the county does look into funding that, because we can purchase the rights from farmers and that land will never be developed. And it's all about the money. I mean, if folks have a farm and the developer can pay a high premium for it, I mean, we see that happening over and over. But if we fund the PDR programs, that kind of places some of these farms out of reach. They can't be developed. They'll always stay green. And I think that's important to look at. But we also do need to have housing. And these things can go hand in hand. It's not housing versus farmland. It's not anything like that. They go together. Affordable housing is mostly defined as 30% of household income. So folks that are working for minimum wage, that's kind of tough. So I've been looking into some exclusionary zoning possibilities with the Planning Commission, and these things are like a density bonus, or they offer developers incentives to be able to do some more creative things than they can right now with land requirements. And building from it within, and we've got a lot of dilapidated, well, not a lot, I wouldn't say that, maybe not. We have some dilapidated buildings and some places that we could really look at doing some affordable housing for the growth. Our friends in Lexington, they have developed old warehouses into some very fashionable communities, and so it's interesting to look at some of the possibilities that we might not have looked at before, but I do think that it's very, very important to preserve farmland, but this does not mean that you can't have affordable housing and as well.
Thank you.
I think I'm the prime answer to the question. We developed over 2,000 acres, the largest residential development in the Commonwealth. 3 different communities, Mallory Point, Westwoods, and Harbor Village, and never developed the first acre of prime farmland. Never took 1 acre of prime farmland out of production. So I think that there's areas that you can develop that does preserve it. And I think the planning and zoning can look at that and direct that. You know, we have a comprehensive plan that shows areas for green space. But where I have an issue is it's not always followed. When you have the corridor between Georgetown and Lexington, I don't want to see that developed. I don't want Georgetown to become what it is between Nicholasville Road and Nicholasville. You don't know when you leave one and go to the other. We will lose our small town charm. We will lose that flavor. In preserving the farms, I think it's very important. I was in agriculture for 30 years. We bred and raised thoroughbreds. We had cattle. Some years you make money, and some years you don't. But I had people come to me, and I talked to many in the community, and they said, what do you think about, instead of 5 acres, expanding it to 20? Raising it up that you can't build a house on anything less than 20 acres. Now, they did that in Lexington. I'm not for that at all. The farmer may need, his son and daughter may have grown. He may want to give 5 acres for them to build a house on the family farm. He may need the money because he bought cattle at a certain price and they dropped in half. And his notes due at the bank and he needs to make a payment. He's got somebody there that can buy that 5 acres. So, I mean, there's many different things to look at, but I think we need to enforce the regulations, and I think we need to take oversight of our planning and zoning. Let
Thank you.
somebody do that that's done that all their life.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Covington?
You know, if we can give tax incentives to manufacturing, why can't we give tax incentives to the backbone of our community for many years, the family farm? And I agree with Mr. Hughes there. We should investigate that more. But in regards to the comprehensive plan, you know, the Great Scott Plan is the community's plan. Many, many hours were put into that plan. People from all over the community, from all parts of the community, helped put that together. And we need to trust that process. It's the community's plan. And a lot of thoughtfulness went into it, and a lot of expertise. And of course, we need to continue to help be a part of those decision making by magistrates and judges there to be a part of that in the future when it's. But it's a 254-page document that took a lot of time to put together, and we need to trust that, and hopefully that helps us maintain our balance between agriculture and manufacturing. But of course, we want to preserve our green spaces and help our family farmer as much as we could. And it'd be something that I would investigate with the magistrates as well, tax incentives for family farmers.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, the next question begins with you. Tell us your campaign slogan and why you chose it.
It is KaylaJones.Solutions. That is the name of my website. And the reason for that is because there are so many issues that face us. There's so many challenges. There's so many good things. But if we all work together and we look at these problems objectively, we can always find a solution. I believe we all have pretty similar ideas on what we would like to see happen in our county. I think the problem is we disagree on the route to get there. We all want to raise our families and have a successful life and a high quality of life. Sometimes we're going to butt heads over how to get there, but I feel like if we all work together, there's a great deal to be done. And like I said earlier, just being able to put the people that are excited about something that they're going to do, the right people in the right jobs, they can get so many things done. And I think that's part of the solution process.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
My campaign slogan was developed when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, maybe even younger than that. And I was riding in the back seat of my car, my father was driving, I had my arms up on the back of it, and we were talking. And I said, Daddy, I said, what do you want me to be when I grow up? And he thought for a second, and some of my options at the time was a cowboy and a lumberjack and a gunfighter. And he thought for a minute, and he said, honey, he said, I don't care what you are. He said, if you want to be a doctor, you be a doctor. He said, if you want to be a garbage man, you be a garbage man. He said, you just promise me one thing. He said, you be the best damn garbage man they've got, and you always make me proud. And so my campaign slogan is, I promise I'll make you proud. And that's what I did to my dad that day.
Thank you. Mr. Covington?
I've been a public educator for 27 years and an administrator since 2007 and the head principal at Scott County High School for the last 3 years. And every decision that I make is based on 3 things: honesty, transparency, and trust. And you build trust by just day in and day out doing what's right and dealing with people and building positive relationships and working with people in a positive frame. And have no agenda other than doing what's right and doing what's right for everybody involved. And as county judge, that will continue to be a priority for me, to make every decision based on honesty, transparency, and trust. And I think my record of that speaks for itself.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes?
Well, this is a really good question because it will really shorten most of our closing remarks tonight. The 3 things that I've based my campaign on are character, integrity, and experience. The next judge will need to have the character to work with many different people. That will require that we check our egos at the door. Even if it's someone we really don't want to work with, we have to get things done for this community. And I have that ability. It's not a lot of fun, but I have that ability. Integrity. As badly as I want to be your next county judge, I won't tell you something because I think you want to hear it. If I tell you something, I truly believe I can do it. And if I can't deliver, I'll let you down. And experience is the years I spent on the court learning the inner workings of the fiscal court and the judge executive. I think those three things are what my campaign is about and why I want to be county judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, you now have 3 minutes for your closing remarks.
3 minutes for my closing remarks.
Up to 3 minutes.
Well, when we first started, I told you about 3 things that were important to me, and I just want to recap on that. I mentioned going in and doing a pay evaluation as far as county employees. I feel like that's very important, and I would be ready to do that day one. I also think that we have a lot in Scott County as far as resources, and we have a lot to be proud of, and I want to keep remembering that even when we're going through problems, and just keep remembering the prize and the goal ahead of us. There's a lot of other things I'd like to talk about. I'm really a great advocate of recycling. I think that we really, really need to rededicate some of our time to this, especially with the whole landfill issue that we've been going through. There are so many alternatives out there once we set our mind to doing it. But it's impossible to cover everything that's important to you tonight in this limited time. But I do have a sincere desire to work hard and to be the best that I can be for this county. And I really do think that I could achieve a lot of things with the teamwork and with going hand in hand with everyone else that loves this county as much as I do.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Since retired,
Since retiring from active development in July 2014, it's allowed me the time to become more active in the chamber, Scott County United, the many civic groups. And it's allowed me to utilize my time and resources to support different community programs and to add to the quality of life. My priorities, should I be so fortunate to be elected county judge, will be health and safety, 1, quality of life, 2. In the quality of life, it's essential that our employees and the county government move forward as one to accomplish this for all. If it affects the least among us, it affects us all. Oftentimes people feel like that those who are connected are the only ones that get recognized, are the only ones that get assisted, are the only ones that get the favors. I would like to be the judge for the little guy. I'm the only true outsider up here. I have no strings attached to me. I have self-funded my own campaign, and I consider it a privilege to do so, to give back for what great things Scott County has done in it for me. Now, when I speak of small town charm, when I came to George County, like I say, this was in 1982, I fell in love with the community. I become part of the community, part of the fabric. And it would affect me, it would negatively affect my life, I think, if we lost our small town flavor, if we lost our small town charm, if we didn't have oversight of our growth. We need to maintain what we were. It's not, all too often we get down the road and we look back and we remember what we were. We shouldn't lose that, ladies and gentlemen. We've got so many positives today. The school board superintendent, Dr. Hub, I was so privileged to have one of the first conversations he ever had with community leaders when he came here. You know me, I'm very direct. You don't have to worry about where I stand on any issue. He's from the military, he's the same way. Our first question, I don't know that we didn't butt heads, but I was supportive of education. I was supportive of his position. I was supportive of his dream and vision for Scott County, where we needed a high school. Supported that as president of the Chamber of Commerce and supported that as a member of Scott County United. And I think the quality of life issues begins with education. My father was a teacher. He spent his life in education. I grew up, when we got a bicycle, my brother and I, for Christmas, we got one. And it was whoever got to fight the other one the longest and hardest got to ride it. So that's where I come from. And where I am today is in the greatest place in the world. And I'd love the opportunity to be your county judge moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Covington?
We live in a great community. We have great government, but we need a leader. And we're in a critical transition point. And we need a leader that has experience and proven experience, demonstrated administrative experience, day in and day out, working with people. And it boils down to just those same two things: casting a vision and then influencing others to believe in your vision. And I have the skills to do that, and I've worked with people, and I have the data that proves, that demonstrates that I have those leadership skills. That tele-survey data is important to me, and I'm proud of that, because that is representative of how I go about my business. When you have 97% of your staff saying that leadership and staff have a shared vision, and 97% says leadership uses data to improve what's going on at that high school, and then 94% of my teachers saying that we have an atmosphere of trust and respect at the school, day in and day out. That doesn't, it happens because you show up, you come to work every day, and you do what's right. And our county government needs a leader, and someone that has that demonstrated experience of being an administrator and working with people day in and day out. I'll go to my goals. I've said this from start campaigning and talking to people. Number one thing we need to do is take care of our county employees and develop that comprehensive competitive salary schedule. We need an HR director that will take politics out of every HR decision, period. We need to make sure that our growth in our public services matches our community's growth. And we need to be forward-thinking. And I'm that person that's forward-thinking and collaborative and works with people in a genuine fashion. And one thing that I haven't gotten to mention is, as an educator, I see day in and day out that broadband access is like a utility now, and we need to help expand that. County government should try to expand that, and we can do that on an educational front and on a business front. So those are goals that I will hit the ground running January 1st of 19, and work with our magistrates and our constitutional officers to do what's right for Scott County, period.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes?
Well, as I said earlier, it's going to make my closing a lot shorter because we took those three things. But what we have to do is what Mr. Covington said. We have to make sure we take care of our employees so our employees take care of our community and the needs of our community. We need to set up an HR, but it's going to take a little bit of work because we have constitutional officers and we have to see what the needs for their departments are in that endeavor. A career ladder is absolutely essential so that people see that there's a future for them in county government, that they can make a living for their family. Some of the things we talk about are our firefighters and our police officers, detention center workers. We need to make sure that those people know from the top down that they're respected and we appreciate the service they bring to this community. When we talk about internet connectivity, while I was on the court, any tower or place that county government owned, we offered free access to some of the small companies that would come in and do that. When we expand our communications and putting up new towers in the county, there's another opportunity to do that and bring more people into connection with the internet. All of us here tonight have talked about our goals and our ambitions and what we can do for county government. I have worked my entire life, as all of you have, in this community. And I look forward to giving back part of what has been given to me. So on May 22nd, I would appreciate your vote for Stuart Hughes for Judge Executive. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to personally thank each of the candidates for their participation tonight. We hope to see each of them and each of you in our audience at the upcoming Scott County Reagan Day Dinner. This year's event will be held on Saturday, May 19th at the Hilton Garden Inn in Georgetown. Leland Conway will be our host, and Congressman Andy Barr will be the speaker, along with special guest Corporal Matthew Bradford of the U.S. Marine Corps. Ticket information is available on Facebook and Eventbrite. Also, please remember we are accepting donations tonight to cover costs. Please consider giving so that we can continue to support our candidates' campaigns in the future. If you did not get a chance to sign in when you arrived, please do so when you leave. And also, please follow us, Scott County Republican Party, on Facebook to stay up to date on all of our events. Thanks to Georgetown College and Made from Scratch for their hospitality tonight. This does conclude our Scott County Judge Executive Forum. Thank you again to the candidates and all those who are here tonight in support of them. Please join me in giving them a round of applause.